Hello, and welcome to the talk about a practical approach to GDPR. In case someone occasionally missed it, GDPR stands for General Data Protection Regulation. That's the new European law, which came into effect 25th of May 2018, and is intended to provide a new level of privacy protection to the people living in the European Union. And this law doesn't really prohibit personal data usage, it just sets some rules to protect people from an unwanted and harmful one. What I'm going to tell you is based on a true story from Telenor Digital. Telenor is a telecom company which is present in Scandinavia and Asia and has over 170 million customers and has over 160 years of history. Telenor Digital is a business unit of Telenor which provides global services to other business units like data lake, digital identity, digital marketing tools, direct operated billing, and permissions management, a privacy protection tool, which I'm going to show you in a minute. So, when we first faced GDPR, we figured out that we need to understand our data processing much better than before. We had to have precise control and transparency over what we're doing with personal data. It wasn't like before, we had good people, good standards, it wasn't enough. So the first exercise was actually to list all the data processing activities we had and understand on which legal basis we work. To do that, we had to capture a list of use cases. This doesn't sound like a big data, right? That sounds like a tiny list. And we all here probably know the answer to the problem of capturing and processing a tiny list of data. Anyone can guess? Spreadsheets, right? Spreadsheets to the rescue. But we quickly figured out that the information we're going to capture is rather complex. It's not just a tiny list. It's several tables when tables describe records in other tables, and the subject matter is so complex that it is almost impossible to go through the process without a guidance from a legal expert. Obviously, it wasn't possible to process, to analyze this data without legal expert either. And more than that, after first interviews, we found that we have many more use cases than we anticipated. This picture you see right now is a real graph of interchanges between services just in Telenor Digital, not in the whole Telenor. At the end of the process, we found that we had over 400 use cases, over 100 data categories used over 2,000 times, just in one business unit of Telenor. That's a lot. You cannot really process it manually in a period where legal experts are not available because everyone is busy with GDPR. Guess how many we had in our team? One. That was a brilliant guy, but just a one guy. So we figured out that we need to automate the process. We tried to find a tool on the market. That was early 2017, and we didn't find anything which met our needs. So we had to develop the tool ourselves. And our brilliant lawyer, who ended up writing SQL queries sitting with developers, helped us to invent the interface you see on the picture, which guides people through the process, allowing them to enter data about use cases in a self-service way, so we didn't need to sit with them and tell them what to do. After that, the same brilliant guy was able actually to translate GDPR into the code, into the algorithm, which makes most of the conclusions automatically. This tool allows us to have records of processing automatically, figure out where we have missing data processing agreements, security measures, where we work on which legal basis, where we need consent, where we need objection handling because we are working on legitimate interest. So this tool solved the first part of the problem, figuring out how and where we are processing personal data. But then we figured out that we have some use cases which require consent and objection management. And for that, again, we were thinking about finding a tool on the market. But this area is very sensitive, because this is about interaction with a customer, so you would like the experience to be as good as possible. And it appeared that it is impossible to find a tool which creates a good user experience. At least it was like that in early 2017. So we had again to create a tool ourselves. This is it. Permissions management service we created, and it has 4 major parts. The first part is privacy tour, when we explain in short terms, in simple words, how in general we process personal data. The second part is permissions management, where we basically have a list of permissions for personal data processing for different purposes and switches aside of each, so that people just can simply control, turn them on and off. And we decided to combine both consents and objections, which we accept automatically in the same list, because from the user perspective, you just say, yes, I agree, yes, I disagree, and users don't really care that much about if it's consent or an objection. Then we have a section on data subject rights. You probably are familiar with them already. This is rights to delete your data, to get a full dump of your data, to get information on how data is being processed, to rectify, and so on and so forth. So we have an interface which serves like an entry point to executing of these rights. And we have a long read session, a section with legal documents where we have terms of use and privacy notice for people who like to read long texts. This is about the tool, and it has some essential capabilities we didn't find on the market. First capability I would like to mention is built-in A/B testing. It is extremely difficult nowadays to express yourself right at the very first second. And people nowadays, most of them on the internet, have attention span like a goldfish, just several seconds. So if you didn't get it right from the very first phrase, you lost the attention. We would like not to be in this situation, so we have a capability which shows slightly different texts to different users to figure out which works best. It's not about trying to trick users, it's about trying to explain ourselves in the best way. And you can see that just placing the same word into a different place in the same sentence makes a huge difference. This graph is real. It makes 50% difference when you just move one word to another place. And we also support many, many channels. Since we have a lot of conventional channels like SMS, customer care, physical stores, we need to support them as well. So we have a web application which is built on responsive design principle, and it can mimic mobile app interface, and it can be part of a web page. And we also have a set of APIs which allows other channels which are not web-based to interact with the service and see the same data and accept decisions through that channel as well. But when user changes the state of the switch, we need to respect this decision all over the Telenor. And I know that some colleagues in other companies, they create a central system to hold all the personal data. And then, if you need personal data, you just go to the system, authorize yourself, and get what you need. We could not afford it in Telenor. Telenor has a long history. It's heavily geographically spread, so we cannot really create a centralized system which will work for everyone. So it needs to be distributed. And here are some examples of how we do it. There are also different modes of checking permissions for personal data processing. For example, if you have a service and you would like to understand if current user has agreed for the session tracing for the product improvement, you can just call an API and get yes or no. If you run a marketing campaign, for example, you can get a dump of decisions, and you can merge it with the audience of marketing campaign and filter out that people who have objected to personalized marketing. If you are very remote or very sensitive to latency, this is the way to go. We have every single decision change in the permissions management published to a message queue. And anyone can consume to this queue and update in real time a local cache which allows to perform these permission checks with low latency very, very effectively. But this is about single checks and batch processing. When it comes to real-time processing, that's a different story. For that, we have a stream filter. Essentially, this is just an application based on Kafka streams, and it reads one source topic of data, which then eventually can be used for multiple use cases. And doing different checks for different use cases, at the permissions management, it produces several streams which are clean and lawful to process for each and every purpose. For example, if user agreed for product improvement, it does not necessarily mean that user agreed to the personalized marketing. So these two data sets should be separated. That's how we built it behind the scenes, a federated permissions checking infrastructure. And during deployment of it, we faced a very interesting problem. We based our service on digital identity we have in Telenor, which is called Connect ID, but during deployments, we found that many systems are using different identifiers from what we use in permissions management. Some of them just use another custom identifier. Some of them are using subscription identifiers. That's the level below, because one customer can have multiple subscriptions. And then digital marketing world, which uses cookies and mobile advertising IDs. All this variety of systems needs to check and respect permissions user gives to us. So, to be able to distribute permissions we collect on one identifier to all this variety of systems, we created a master data management kind of system called ID map. It basically collects links between different identifier types, and then when permission management distributes a set of permissions somewhere, let's say to a programmatic marketing platform, it translates it from the identifier permission was collected to the identifier particular data processor understands. So for digital marketing platform, it will be something like, this browser owner has not agreed to personalized marketing. Don't show personalized banner. And then, an interesting and bulky area of GDPR compliance, data subject rights, and how to handle them. We started with a simple form which just had a text and a button to raise a request. And we checked the statistics, and we had something like 5 requests per year per country, and we assumed that everything can be done manually. That was a huge mistake. When we deployed it for the first time, we found that people are confused. They are clicking all the buttons just to figure out what will happen next. Some of the people were clicking the same button several times, and we didn't have a log. Guess how many requests we've got for one person, one day, for the same type of requests? 21. This guy was really enjoying clicking the button. At the same time, our customer care was overloaded, and we introduced a lock which disallows creation of additional requests when we have a request of the same type already being processed. But we also quickly found that we don't have 5 requests per year anymore. We have hundreds per month. And our manual approach, which was based on scripts and playbooks, brought us to the situation where all the engineers were busy with data deletion and data exports. That was not sustainable at all, and we steadily shifted to the full automation of the process, and now most of the processing of data subject requests is automated, with the exception of the very start of the process when we still have communication through customer care to ensure that user really wants to delete account, for example, not just history, which is quite a significant operation, I would say, with the data loss. And we created a new interface for data subject right requests handling, which is elaborative. It explains every step, what is done on this step, what is expected as an outcome, and we hope users now understand better which exactly button to click to reach their goal, and our customer care has more meaningful requests and less requests which were created just because of confusion. So this is a tool set. And as a conclusion, I should say that we have done a lot of work on this. But we don't perceive it as a burden, because now we understand our data processing a way better than before. We know where the data is. And when we think about a new use case, we don't just refuse the idea because it looks suspicious from the privacy perspective. We can figure out what exactly we need to do from the privacy perspective to be compliant, and we have all the tools in place to set the use case up in the proper way. And more than that, through this chain of tools, we are creating trust with our customers, and in our digital era, probably this trust is the biggest and most important value of the tool set we created. Thank you. Do you have any